right, everyone. Welcome to our Friday Tech Talk. Today we have Tyler Hoff. He's a recruitment manager for OpenTeams in Texas, and he's going to go over strategies to navigate the tech market. He's going to cover tips that make your application stand out. He's going to cover practical advice to elevate your career and development, and I'm sure he'll cover a lot more. So without further ado, Tyler, go ahead and take it away.
All right, nice to meet y'all. If you have questions throughout, please feel free to ask them. You don't need to hold them to the end. I want to make sure that my talk is catered to the group and not to the structure of what I put together. I kind of put together kind of a skeleton format, and again, can expound in areas that I think, you in particular may have questions for. So to kind of kick things off and let you know a little about my background, so you know my lens, right? Because people are every recruiter is going to have their lens. Every business development person is going to have their lens. So you know where I'm coming from, and you kind of take that with a grain of salt and what perspective I have. I come from a executive recruiting background, where I can actually back up quite a bit. I got my degree in exercise physiology at BYU, and then did a year internship in physical therapy and thought this is not the career path for me. Went into the Army as an infantry officer. So I was an infantry officer for 5 years, and then fractured my ankle, med boarded out, and then went back to what I did when I was in my college days, which was recruiting and staffing agency. So I then got into executive recruiting, but I didn't want to touch tech. Like, tech is its own beast, and on the recruiting side, you have to be very knowledgeable on tech to get into that. So I did executive recruiting for a while, and then I got pulled into a apprenticeship program doing recruiting for apprenticeships. And then I got pulled into Steve Wozniak's apprenticeship program. So companies like Infosys and Cognizant, Accenture, basically doing mass recruiting for these organizations, but only at the junior level. So I kind of got a taste of recruiting, but for anybody, they had to have less than 2 years of experience. So that was kind of my intro in. Did that for a number of years, and then got into more upper level technical recruiting. And in the past 18 months or so, have been more focused on strategic partnerships and partner alliance with OpenTeams, where I'm at now. So I'm still helping with recruiting, but more on a company scale, large scale, for a lot of support for Fortune 100 companies, and how we can support and align with them. So if that kind of helps frame my background, where I come from, and so kind of my lens and perspective here. So I didn't recruit for, I don't know what I can say here. I didn't recruit for Meta, but I have worked with Meta in finding them personnel and contractors. I was trying to make sure what companies I can and can't name. There's some large banks. Didn't work for a specific bank. However, with my job here, we did do recruiting for some of their quants, and other technical members of their team. So I have some perspective into those companies. While I didn't work for them specifically, I can tell you a little bit, and have that lens of what they're looking for, and how, they brought people on. So I'm going to go a little bit into the resume side, but I don't want to dive too deep into that unless you have specific questions, because there's a lot of resources out there for resume, and I don't want take up too much of your time with free resources that are out there like that. So my first bit of advice from the entry-level recruiting side is keep your resume just clean and organized. Obviously there's plenty of resources out there, but declutter it, the best you can. I've seen a lot of people where they start off, and if you're wanting a tech role, if you have the background like mine, where it's, military and physical therapy, things like that, that doesn't play well on my resume. Those are obviously bullet points I want to have. That's more of like the about me section, but I don't want that to be the bulk of my resume as I'm going into a tech job. So there are things that you can highlight, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit more. But again, declutter previous non-technical work experience. I'm not saying ignore it, but don't let that be your identity. And then this is probably one of the simplest and biggest things. You probably have your resume saved on your computer, and if it's anything like me, it was probably saved as resume, right? Now, from a recruiter's perspective, or anybody that you're sending it off to, when they download it, it's going to be resume. Change it to your name, and that's it, right? I mean, you can have it your name resume, but I would highly suggest retitling it to your full name with the resume. So anybody looking it up or seeing it, it's a lot easier to find from a recruitment perspective, and an email, when they're ATS, if it doesn't pick up your name, it can there. There's a lot of benefits to that. And then there's a small enough group. So, my bit of advice would probably be 1 and then your name. So it even bumps up even further, right? If they're looking things in alphabetical order, or if somebody downloaded a bunch of resumes, if you're 1, then your resume, every time they open up their downloads or they're opening up that, that's my just biased opinion, because I've seen certain people's resume way more that 2 years ago, they're still popping up in my inbox or when I open up my downloads, unless I clear it in that format. So little things like that. I've seen a lot of resumes that come in where they have hyperlinks where it just says like email and it's a hyperlink, but it doesn't show their email. So if I don't have it, if it goes into our ATS and they have a hyperlink for their email, it'll pull and plug in. It'll just say email. It actually doesn't even plug in their email. So if I try to email that person, I have to actually go in and look at how it's downloaded. There's a bunch of extra steps behind it. So don't overcomplicate it. Actually put out your full email. Put your full LinkedIn. Don't just type, hyperlink LinkedIn. Following up with that, with using LinkedIn, make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and matches your actual resume. I've seen ones where they conflict, where dates aren't the same or tasks aren't the same. In my opinion, coming from LinkedIn side, your LinkedIn profile will be almost just as important as your actual resume itself. And you can actually create a resume just from your LinkedIn profile. If you bulk that up and spend a lot of time in it, you can export that into an actual resume. And with that, your title, if you look at mine, I think it's like LinkedIn/open source leader. You can actually change your URL and you can make it something technical. So it's not just a bunch of numbers or partially your name with numbers mixed in. So it stands out a little bit more and probably looks a little bit better too on your actual resume itself when people are searching or looking for your profile. So those are the 2 things kind of right off the bat for resume. And again, happy to dive in more with some stuff there, feedback, things that I've seen on the actual resume itself. And obviously get feedback from your resume. I would have at least 2 people review it. And the way to know that somebody actually reviewed it is put 2 noticeable errors in your resume, like grammatically or spelling. Maybe not like a programming language, don't spell some obtuse language that you learned and spell it wrong, because they won't identify that, but spell there versus, THEIR and THERE, right? Whatever you're going to do, make 2 obvious errors that you're aware of. And then when you're sending off to somebody, if they're reviewing your resume and they don't catch it, they're not reviewing your resume, or they're not invested in reviewing your resume. So that way you can kind of tell who actually is invested in your future and who wants to help you versus who doesn't. And it's not a dig against them. They may just not have the bandwidth, or they're not somebody who should be reviewing a resume, right? So people will send off to family members or friends, and that's great. But if your car is broken, are you going to have your mom look at your car and say, hey, your mom obviously cares about you, but she may not know exactly what she's looking for. So that's my advice on that front. And I'm going to tie into mentors a little bit later, and that'll go back to this resume part as well. So those are some of the, quick and easy thing on the resume side that can really help you or can kill you before even, you're not going to get a job interview if you clutter up that first part, right? So that's some of the things that I have there. Don't pay for someone to review your resume. There's a lot of other options that you should have before you ever pay someone. Unless they're going for like a CEO role, way down the road and there's a lot of money on the line, there's no need to have someone review your resume to that extent. So kind of pivoting over to the LinkedIn side, right? Your resume is one thing, but your LinkedIn, at least for me and a lot of other recruiters and companies that are out there that are using it, that's really your resume, and that's live, that's up to date. Make sure that's current. And there's a lot of tips and tricks that you can look at to kind of pop on there and be unique. Whether you have that green open to work or not, there's a lot of banter stuff there. I don't think it really matters. Some of the things I do think matter, and I can tell you from having used Recruiter, like the professional recruiting side of LinkedIn, if I'm looking for somebody with a particular skill set, I'll type in the skills that I need, and it's going to pull up people based on those keywords. Now, here's the thing. you don't want to lie on your resume, but you want to be seen. So here's the way to kind of navigate those waters. One, if you're putting your skill sets, put things that you're comfortable with or you're familiar with. Now, to add to your resume and be seen without embellishing it, and you can go to your about section, you can go to interest, things like that. And in there, you can put, here's where I'm at in my career, but these are things that I want to learn in my future, right? And that's when you start naming technologies where maybe you're in the AI ML space and you haven't touched like PyTorch, when you kind of want to get involved in that side. Well, if you put PyTorch in there and you're saying, hey, I'm interested in learning PyTorch and, these other languages, when a recruiter is now looking for somebody for PyTorch, you will show up in there. Now, two things. One, you may not be qualified for the job, but two, they may look and say, you're not qualified for this job, but now at least you're on their radar, right? They've pulled you up, they've seen you. And so certain jobs, maybe you don't need every skill set. They want 5 out of the 8 technologies that, the hiring manager wants you to have. And so putting a lot of extra keywords in there just helps pull you up in those searches. Now, again, that doesn't mean you're going to get every job that works, but you're getting in front of recruiters, right? At the beginning, it's more of a numbers game than anything else, right? Once you have 12, 24, 36 months of experience, way more doors open, right? Your network opens up. It's that first job that's typically one of the hardest ones to land and takes that persistence and perseverance. And that's why I say you really want to, spread your options, right? If you're working with a sniper and you're trying to hit one target, it's going to be very difficult. But if you have a target and you're shooting with a shotgun and spreading a lot of bullets, you don't want to spray and pray. You don't want to get a job, that you're not qualified for, but you certainly want to put yourself out there as much as you can and be seen as much as you can. So on the LinkedIn side, happy to kind of dive in more to that, what it looks like from a recruiter perspective, if I'm using Recruiter Lite or the full version of Recruiter. And again, people are spending thousands of dollars a month on that software. And if you can get in front of those eyes for any reason, that's of value. I've said this in the past, but I was mistaken on it. I used to tell people, hey, you should connect with a bunch of recruiters on LinkedIn. I don't know if that's really the best approach. I've seen it work, but I think you're better off connecting with hiring managers, future mentors, people who would actually be hiring versus people who are doing the recruiting side. Because your recruiter side, I've never really gone through my network, unless it's a senior level person, right? Then I go through my network because it's easier. Those are the people who are harder to get. They're not applying to jobs, they're actually trying to poach them from their job. So that's where, as a recruiter, I'm trying to more network with very senior level people. But on the junior side, I think you're better off connecting to actual people within your organization too, because then when a recruiter is actually looking, they'll see people that you're connected with, right? I can go and see, they're a second degree connection. And then if I see that they're connected with a bunch of mid-level people or higher level people at a company that I'm interested in, I'm more likely to pull up their profile and look at them. So those are some things that, having a different perspective now that I think has helped out, and hopefully I can pass that on. So again, there's a difference between being misleading and appearing in searches. So, that's what you just want to make sure you categorize yourself with. Now with that, as once you're kind of in the sights of a recruiter or anybody, hiring manager or anything else, you have your resume in front of them. One of the things that's going to make you stand out is having a strong portfolio or body of work. That's what you want to reference. So if you don't have the job experience and you don't have 2, 3, 4 years of work experience, your portfolio is what they're going to consider and what they're going to look at. So strengthen that as much as you can. Have projects in there. If you don't have a lot of projects and you're not wanting to do projects from scratch and just, hey, invest a lot of time into one of the best things you can do is probably work with others on a body of work, right? Because there's 2 things that come with that. One, you can have a much larger portfolio with a lot of diverse projects, even though you may have only done 5, 10, 20% of whatever is in there. You're showing 2 things. One, that you're capable of working on a remote team. It may not be remote, maybe you're in an office with somebody, but you're showcasing that, you can mix your skill sets with others to accomplish something. And that's pretty much any job you're going to get. Most of them, you're going to be part of a team anyway. So that'll help showcase that you can shine there. And then 2, you're expanding a lot, right? You can have 10 different projects on there where you're spending 10% of your time on these 10 different projects versus 100% of your time on one project. And now your portfolio is just this one widget. Hey, I built this chess game that you can play. It's like, well, that's great. But then now you show something where, hey, here's, something I did that involved kind of like a version of MapQuest or Google Maps and a tip calculator. And you have all these different things where you show, hey, here's a lot of different things I was able to do. That can help kind of push you ahead a little bit, right? Now you're actually having a portfolio. Second to that is you're networking with those people that you're building a project with. So if they're getting hired or brought onto an organization, very few times there's somebody looking for just one junior person or one entry level. They're probably looking for 2, 3, 4 to join a team. And so kind of being networked and connected with people who you're doing projects with is that, again, that entry point in. And you may be participating on projects where you may be the least experienced, and there's somebody who's a, engineering manager, somebody who spent 5, 10 years on something, and they're just wanting to build a little project, and you're connecting with somebody way more advanced than you. That's the value add of working on those projects. So with that, again, my perspective, I come from OpenTeams. What we do is we look at open source as kind of our main way of supporting enterprise. So when a company, Fortune 100 company is needing support with open source, we can bring them various architects, various people. So my mindset is open source is good. And again, projects you may have no interest in being part of the open source community, but I can say that can definitely be of value to you, especially if you're wanting to kind of expand your portfolio, contributing to open source, making your GitHub kind of shine. That can definitely be one way to help out. So again, that's usually what, a large bank or somebody else is looking to us for is, hiring that skill set, bringing that person in. Let's see, looking at my notes here. Okay. Searching for jobs. So again, happy to go back and expand on these topics, but I think it's, it's good to give you a variety of things to think about here. Searching for jobs outside the normal channel. So rather than just going into LinkedIn and looking for open jobs or any other, kind of job search site, I'd highly encourage you to get involved in like Slack, Reddit, Discord, find different communities there. A couple things. One, you'll get actually connected with real world people, not just, hey, here's my cohort that I graduated with or my graduation class from this university or whatever it may be. You're going to be kind of in the trenches with people who are in the field. You can find mentors in that group. And then typically those are the people that are actually like hiring managers. It's not HR and recruiting people who are in there. And the hiring managers or project managers, engineering managers, those are the people who know of jobs before the HR people do, right? When they're needing to expand their team, they're thinking, hey, we have budget. I need to bring on somebody. And so before HR even has a job description, that hiring manager may put it into that Reddit thread or Slack community. Hey, I'm looking to expand my team. If anybody knows of someone like this, let me know. So before they get 1,000 emails from it going out to the HR person and flooding in, now they can kind of put it out to their community, which you've embedded yourself in. So you can raise your hand and say, hey, I'm here, right? So you're getting a leg up and not having to compete with the mass market if you're entrenching yourself in that community. And a couple things as when I say community, I'm talking about, not just open source community, but it could be I'm in Austin, Texas, right? So it could be the Austin tech community that I'm getting connected with. So it could be local like that, or it could be technology specific, industry specific, you name it, there's something out there. So if you're really interested in fintech and wanting to get out there, you're probably going to have, depending on if you're in a bigger city or not, you'll probably have local groups that are fintech specific or just technologies. Search it around and look around and crawl, and you'll find plenty of different things. And again, if you want to go for a big corporate versus startup, right? Maybe Y Combinator and looking at, a VC firm, there's back doors into things to find the right spot. If rather than connect with recruiters, maybe connect with a bunch of VC people where they're announcing, hey, that what companies are investing in. If they just invested, $1 million, 2 million, 50 million into a startup, well, that company is going to be hiring people with that 1 million, 10 million, 50 million. And so now you actually have an ear to the ground of, okay, hey, great, this company just received funding. Let me poke into that. There's probably 10 people there. So if I can get in front of them, that's going to expand your chance of getting hired, right? So it's the non-traditional route, and you being more attacking, a hunter rather than a gatherer, in terms of what you're searching for. So, again, I can dive more into that if you want to talk more about that, or if you have questions in that realm, happy to do that. And again, now going back to the community, finding a project that you're passionate about. Two things that I like about that. One, you'll actually enjoy your job a lot more. Your first couple years, you may not enjoy your job because you're better off getting a job and then transferring something you like than holding off for your first, job to be something you really love. If your city's hiring and they need somebody who's going to help with the sanitation website and something like that, that's not the most glorious thing, but it's a great job to take for your first career, right? Going to work for local government. This is what I did. This is a project about whatever. And that transitions to the, maybe you want to go into gaming or, work for a major bank and do some things there. It can be harder to get those without that first step. So, don't lose sight of what your long-term goal is, or don't lose sight of what your long-term goal is and sacrifice for a short-term gain, right? Don't hold out for the best thing, because a good thing can lead to the best. And again, so those communities help you get there. And I think one of the biggest value adds that you can get from a community is finding a mentor. To me, out of everything I'm sharing with you, the most important thing that you can probably get in your career right now is a good mentor. If you don't have one, reaching out on LinkedIn, going on Reddit, going on Slack, like I said, mentors will raise their hand. There's plenty of people. There's more people who want to be a mentor out there than they actually get to. And it may be a complete stranger. Don't be afraid of reaching out to somebody and asking about being a mentor. But remember, there's a difference between asking for a mentor versus asking somebody. I've had it happen to me. I've had it happen to plenty of other people where they just say, hey, you work here. I would love to work there. Can you help me get a job there? That's not a mentor relationship. That's just asking a stranger to put the reputation on the line for you. And most engineers will not do that. I wouldn't put my job online for a stranger who wants to be like, hey, I want to work with you guys. Can you help me out? I'll give them advice, but I'm not going to put my reputation online. A mentorship is a lot different, right? You're asking for advice. You want to learn from them. And there's a lot of great engineers out there. Maybe they're individual contributors or engineering managers that can share their perspective and their advice of, hey, this is how I got where I got. Hey, I'm happy to take a look at your resume and, redirect you to some people. Because again, those are people who are hearing about jobs as well before most others and before it hits the job site. So, picking out mentors and then asking them things that, you wish they would have been able to tell themselves. So there's kind of two different paths you can go, right? You can be more of an individual contributor for most of your career, diving deep into the tech. And then there's kind of the other side, more the engineering manager side. So if you want to not only be on the engineering side, but also lead others, direct projects, create timelines, work with budgets, things like that. And so those are the two paths I see kind of diverging on the career path. And talking to people who are at that phase can help you avoid making a career decision you don't enjoy. If you don't want to lead other people and you don't want to be responsible for their mistakes, stay away from engineering manager. You can make a complete career out of being a individual contributor and going up that path, both in a individual consulting side, all the way up through a Fortune 100 company. You can climb the ranks just as an individual contributor. Versus, again, the engineering manager side, you may end up continuing to climb where you're very removed from tech, to where you're just overseeing tech teams and budgets and kind of being that intermediary between the non-technical and the technical team. So, and again, the way to know whether you may enjoy that is to have good mentors in place. So, having just one mentor is probably not enough. You probably want to have a few in different spots, and kind of create your own personal advisory board. Think of yourself as a company, and create a diverse advisory board that you can probe with questions, ask them ideas. If you get an offer from a startup, it's great to have a mentor who is who you can talk to, who's been in a startup, right? So you can kind of ask them pitfalls, things that you should ask or consider before going in. So again, the mentor side is something I can't speak more highly enough about how important that is. And second to that, when it is your turn, be a mentor, kind of pay it forward. I think that's probably one of the best things that you can do in your career is after you get to a certain point, take that knowledge and experience and pass it on. And yeah, I think that'll definitely help. So again, those are, most of the things I wanted to cover, and again, happy to go back and dive deeper into different ones. And most of what I deal with now, I'm working with companies or individual consultants where it's maybe one person to about 12 people. I work with about 40 different partners right now who kind of fit that persona. And then I have another 50 to 60 or so that are 12 to 50. And then another group that's more like 50 to 120, 140. And then I usually have that next group where it's probably about 150 to 500, and then 500 to 1,000 plus. Those are the partners that I typically work with, and we bring a variety of those into larger companies. So like we're right now doing a government grant. It's a $50 million grant, and we have right now 9 partners involved. And it could be just one person who's an expert in one area to a group. Our largest partner on that one, they have a team of about 50. Not all 50. There's a few people that are engaging on that, but just to give you the perspective of what I typically do with. So now rather than just recruiting an individual, I'm recruiting companies. So yeah, that's my lens, my perspective. Happy to kind of go back and answer some more questions or dive a little bit deeper into the different topics here. But yeah, I want to kind of hand it back over to you guys and answer questions you may have.
All right, attendees are welcome to ask questions in the chat, so you can definitely ask there. If you do have a question, you can raise your hand and we will open up the microphones and you can ask. Couple questions I do have for you, Tyler. So with a resume, what is like it used to be, they say, I guess with non-professional maybe, but they say that a one-page resume was what you want. But I find with professional tech resumes, it's better to have probably 2, just so you can get all the details in there. What's your thoughts on that?
I like 2. I will say most companies now are using an ATS system. Or ATS system, that's repetitive, ATS. And when you send over your resume, a lot of it will just pull and pre-populate. So no matter how you format it, it'll restructure it inside of there. Now, guys, probably your bigger companies, your recruiting services. If you're going to work for a startup, a company of 5 people or 50 people, even 100 people, they're probably not going to have a special ATS. They're just going to have you send over your resume. I've seen resumes. I kid you not, I had one that was well over 50 pages, and it was a nightmare. It was somebody who was applying for a very senior role. They put every publication that they did, every article. And again, this was a very senior person, making probably close to 200 to 400,000 a year with what they're doing in fintech. So, there's not a wrong way, but that's certainly not a way I'd recommend. But yeah, 2 pages is completely fine. Mine's personally 2 pages. I don't. It'd be hard for me to push it down to 1.
Got it. And what are some ATS tips that you have for the attendees?
If you can find somebody who has the time, and I used to do it, and I hesitate to say I still do it because it takes a bit of time, is if you can talk with recruiters, somebody that where you can send them your resume and have them run it through their ATS to see what populates, that can be helpful, right? So that your, especially your contact information translates over smoothly. You know, if you have a really robust header and you make it really beautiful, also save it in a PDF. don't send it to a Microsoft Word or anything else. Whatever format you do at the end, convert it over to a PDF and make sure it converts correctly. You know, if you send it over to somebody, pull it up on your phone, make sure it looks good on your phone, any format that it looks okay. And then on the ATS side, you know, if you're able to find somebody, you know, a tech recruiter or anybody else that can push it in there to see, hey, yes, your email did populate automatically for me along with your name and your education. You know, it automatically populated what it should. That can definitely be helpful, because there's probably about 4 major, you know, ATS versions that are out there that your companies are using. So, you know, you're going to be fine if you can find somebody who uses that, you know.
Sounds good. And there are some websites out there where you can try, where you could do like a sample scan. JobScan is a good website where you can run it through their scanner. That's what I've used in the past. What do you think about free ones online to test for the ATS?
Oh yeah, that can be helpful, but and again, I think there's real value, and there's plenty of people out there who are willing to be mentors if you approach them correctly, right? Just, hey, I really admire your experience. I'd love to see if I can, you know, get some of your thoughts or learn a little bit from you. Easy door opener, like, right? Who doesn't like being looked up to? Or, oh, you know, if I have somebody, you know, I can usually put aside, you know, a few hours a month, a couple hours a week, maybe, to give some advice. And I've had people reach out, and, you know, unless it's a crazy busy week or I'm traveling for a conference, you know, I'm always happy to plug in, okay, here's 15 minutes. Yeah, let's have a Google Meet and send it over and go through some things, and I'll look over some things. But if someone's going to say, hey, here's my 2-page resume, can you go through and edit it? Other things like that. I'm like, that's a little bit harder. I don't know you well enough to know if this is really correct, or, you know, things like that. So, but otherwise, you know, I just went to a Python conference, and there was easily over 3,000 people there who want to be mentors, who don't have anybody to mentor, you know. So that's where they're going to be in these Slack communities, I think.
Yeah, it's a good amount of mentors. And I do find that our students, when they graduate, that is kind of a tough thing for them to find as a mentor. We do recommend like meetups and conferences and that kind of thing. But yeah, if you know, if there's a lot of people that are willing to mentor, that's big.
There's a community that I'm part of, Lead Dev. Let me find the website. They have a Slack community, but Lead Dev. I'm going to put it in the chat here so people can see it. So Lead Dev, it started off as a conference, but, you know, they have a couple conferences, but then they also have their Slack channel, and in their just general Slack channel, they have 19,253 active people. And their conference is, you know, going to be 10,000 plus people. These are all lead developers, and you will have at least, you know, 10% of these who act or want to be mentors. And you're talking about, you know, thousands of people untapped who want to mentor. So putting your name out there, or just connecting with the group or people who are there, you will for sure find a mentor, or somebody who may say, man, I don't have the bandwidth to, you know, mentor somebody right now, but let me connect you with so-and-so who does, right? And especially if it's like a trainer, if you can find somebody who's like a technology trainer in an area you're interested in, you know, maybe like a Python trainer or something like that, great. Get connected with them and learn from them as much as you can. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. I did not know about Lead Dev, and that looks like a great resource. So appreciate that. We do have some questions in the chat. So Zephyr asked, what your thoughts are on gaps in your resume? How much is acceptable, et cetera, for the entry-level engineering roles? Say someone took a break after graduation.
So there's a few ways to approach it. You know, and if I could ask, maybe it'd be helpful to get some context on it too. When you say took a break after graduation, you mean like a a few years, more than 2 years, and there was after graduation, no work whatsoever. And the reason I ask that is I think there's ways that you can fill it in without doing that. 6 to 18 months. At that point you can put, project work or self-study. That's plenty enough time for self-study or on the market. Especially with COVID, there's people who are unemployed for 2 years. So I shouldn't laugh. I'm not laughing about that. I'm saying that's not anything that I'd worry about of a gap in a resume. And there's probably the only time where I've seen it where it's like, hey, there's a 5-year gap or a 10-year gap. And it's a lot more acceptable now than it probably was 10 years ago. Is somebody who was a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, and now they're going back into the workforce. I think it's completely acceptable to say like caregiver. That's certainly something you put in. It's also a way for you to explain it with a recruiter or hiring manager being unable to ask you any further questions, because that's a personal thing. They cannot ask you who you are a caregiver for, what level of care. So, use that wisely. I'm not saying to abuse it if you weren't a caregiver, but no one can ask you about it. And I've seen plenty of those, especially in professional resumes. I've seen people who were, they worked in Silicon Valley and they were there for 5-10 years, and they took a 2-year break where they literally took it because they had millions in their pocket, and maybe they did a failed startup and they don't want to reference that, or they were kind of getting burnout and they had plenty of money just to kind of sit back and relax and go hiking for a couple of years. So, there's no right or wrong thing to put there, but there's definitely things that you can fill if you need to. Yeah, I don't know if I answered that the best way there, gave some guidance, but a couple options. I'm trying to think from my recruiter perspective. If I saw caregiver or self-study, that would probably look a little bit better than nothing. But with the 6 to 18 months, that doesn't matter. I don't think there's, it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other.
All right. No, I think that's good, Tyler. So Dan asked, what's the best way to find mentorship? We did cover that. Lead Devs is a good resource. There's meetups and conferences, that kind of thing. Is there any other recommendations for finding a mentor?
Another thing that's really been popping up is the AI Alliance, right? You have the major tech companies who did it, and now you're having local chapters as well. Like we have the Austin AI Alliance, and those are going to be people who actually have to kind of stand up and say, hey, we're a lot of them are paid. Like I pay, it's like $30 a year for me to part of this alliance. But it lets me go to these meetups. But then it's also that, okay, am I giving back? Am I helping? Am I supporting? Am I being a responsible, tech community member? That's a group that you can kind of penetrate into, because those people want to be part of that. And if you're near a major city, it'd be great to do. And they probably have virtual ways to do it as well. But if you're, Portland, I'm in Austin, any capital of a state probably has an AI Alliance near them, which I think, Dan, is to point to your question, are there technologies that are in demand today from my experience? Remember my lens, right? Like I'm not recruiting for, gaming. Most of my stuff is going to be, most of the things that I see are coming from the open source space. Most of the people that I work with are, data scientists, machine learning, AI space. So Python is a lot more heavy there and more on the mathematical side. 2 caveats with that, and I hear this all the time, is AI ML is sometimes a lot of overused in things and probably overkill in a lot of things. So maybe what you see in the market or what you see in the news, I tend to think of it as probably a bubble. There's a bunch of venture capitalists, a bunch of VC going into like injecting AI into everything, where simple Excel sheet or even a calculator it can be used and it's overkill. So I see a lot of that, but what I see on the horizon, what I've been kind of hearing through the channels a lot more is siloed skill sets and more expert advice in certain industries. Like right now, let me pull this up. We were looking for it today. I posted this to over 1,000 people that we have in our communities, and not a single person has experience with it. We are looking for somebody who can write Triton kernels. So Triton kernels, something I never heard of till a few days ago. I went on LinkedIn and I looked, and most of the people who use that are top machine learning AI people who are working like PyTorch or on Gemini over at Google. It's less than 100 people. So learning one broad technology is great. And I say this with partners too. If, hey, I'm very experienced in Python, that's great. There's a lot of jobs out there that are in Python, but there's way more people out there too who are also in Python versus this, Triton kernels. I'm not saying go learn Triton kernels. Please don't do that. But, being experienced in some of the siloed areas, I think are going to be really helpful in some of those jobs. And that's also why I say, think about what you're passionate about. If you really want to get into fintech, or you really want to get into some, this industry or this company, look at what they may use. There's certain things that NVIDIA, most of their people use, or there's this team of 30 people who use this one technology. And coming from the open source side, maybe get involved with that project and just probe a little bit in there. And after 6-12 months of, doing pull request or, just even some code sourcing or things like that, you're going to get connected with people and be a bit more familiar with it to where you can actually put that on your resume and be pulled in much quicker than somebody who's never had the experience. So, learning what's most important today or what's most prevalent today probably won't help you, because by the time you learn it in 6 to 12 months to 24 months, it's going to be the old thing. So, your engineering managers now, and this is probably a luxury that you're going to have 3 years from now, is looking at what's on the landscape and what's new. And you'll see probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 different things, 4 different technologies, and they're in a race, right? And it's going to be, okay, which one 2 years from now is going to be the one that wins that race and that everybody's adopting? I think back when it was Blu-ray, and then there was something else that was the alternative to Blu-ray, but Blu-ray won, right? But it's kind of, which technology do you want to invest your time into learning, and then hopefully pick the right one. But if you're, again, 2 or 3 years into your career, this is something you're doing on the side, so you don't have to worry about that of well, if it doesn't take off, I'm screwed. You still have the back pocket knowledge of what you currently have. So, once you get your first job, do not stop on learning. Don't expect to only learn what you're learning in your job. Make learning tech your hobby. Make learning another language your hobby. That will help you extremely in your career.
All right. Yeah, AI is quite the buzzword right now, and it seems like everybody's adding AI, or companies are adding AI to their products and to everything. And it is like you said, it's probably a bubble, but everybody's using it now. And it seems like venture capitalists, they want to invest in something that has AI in it. Mm-hmm. So like you said, it may not be really AI, but people are adding it to it just for the current trends. So
if I think my biggest suggestion would be, once you kind of have some tech under your belt, if you can mix in a bit of data with it, right? It's going to be more on the mathematical side. And you may think, well, I'm not good with math. Don't worry about that. You can learn it. That will be what will probably help you most, and be a very transferable skill set. I think that's the best thing that you can do, is have a skill set that's transferable from any company to industry, whatever it may be. That's what's going to help you in the long run and help make you be a better value. So. Trying to read
All
Diana's.
right.
Let's see.
I was just about to read it to you, but go ahead.
See, I'm a senior engineering, or sorry, my screen's really small here. I'm a senior.
I can read it.
Okay.
All right. Diana says, I'm a senior project administrator for engineering design for large construction projects. Taking AI tech courses to try to change into the tech field. What do you recommend to me to do? What do you recommend to me to do in my resume to make my previous 8 years being a corporate professional and how that experience counts?
I would say that it makes you a better end user. You are an end user of the technology that you want to be working with, correct? Am I understanding this correctly? That's how I would pitch it myself, is not only are you learning like what's being used, but you know how it's being used. That's what you want to showcase in that. How you do that on a resume, it may be a bit harder to, I think, because your previous metrics were probably like oversaw this budget, oversaw the completion of this many projects, right? It's going to be your KPIs for that role. Now, transferring that into the tech side, you probably want to have that, but you're going to include the technology kind of twist on that, right? So using blank systems oversaw this budget, right? So that maybe that little tweak where if you weren't technical, they don't care what system you're using. But on the technical side, that's where you're kind of twisting it to, okay, I'm not only aware of what I did, but I'm aware of the technologies that were used that helped me be successful. So now I can help go back and better the technologies in this field because I know what those project managers are actually using and what they need, right? It's kind of like being a bar back and you have a POS system. I keep saying system when it is already in there. So you have a POS and, there's a lot of features and they're like, man, whoever designed this was definitely a tech person and was never a bar back or never a bartender, right? So those are you want to make sure that that's transferable, that you're showcasing that not only were you a project manager, but you're cognizant of what technologies made you successful in that or what things you were able to overcome even though you didn't have that system. How you do that in a resume, I'd have to tinker with that for a bit, but hopefully that answered a little bit.
And Eduardo asked, he's wondering if it's okay to post your own tech services to meetups like this one. And kind of building off that, what is the best way to kind of showcase your skills when you're at a conference or you're at a meetup or that kind of thing, and you're meeting new people?
So that would be something more like if you want to showcase your skills, things like that, probably hackathon. Those are good. What else do they call them? When you're at a conference, there's typically 2 days before, 2 days after where they not only they don't just call it a hackathon. Some will call it something else. I'm trying to think of what it is. Let me pull it up here. This is gonna bug me unless I know. Tutorials. So there's tutorials where you can go and you can go and learn things that people are talking about there, but they're gonna be more like workshops, right? So you can go there and that's more you're actually engaging with people and able to talk more about your experience. And every conference I go to, people are pretty open about why they're there and no one would judge you like, hey, I'm here to network or I'm here to find a job and this is my skill set. The more open you are, the more people can help point you in the right direction. Like, oh, you're looking for, hey, go talk to so-and-so. I know that they're doing this. Go talk to so-and-so, right? If you're keeping it to yourself and you're trying to be like sly about, hey, here's what I'm doing, but you're not vocalizing, I'm looking for work, people are going to be like, oh, wow, it's really cool what you're working on. And they're going to go on their way, and again, coming from maybe the open source community, people are very loving. Like that's kind of the idea of like, hey, open source tech, there's enough room for all of us. There's enough food at the table for all of us to eat. But any conference I've been to, I feel like it's always been that way. People are wanting to be engaging. people want to network, you know, and if you rub shoulders with somebody and you're not in a job and they really like you and they're in a position, you know, at a company, they probably want to help you because then they can help themselves later on too. You know, if they can help you get a job, you know, hey, I'm working at JP Morgan. I really like you. I don't have anything here, but I was talking to this guy from Bloomberg. You should go talk to them. Let me do that introduction. Well, great. Now he plugged you in at Bloomberg. So guess what he has? He now has a connection at Bloomberg, right? So you see like the reciprocal side of that, you know, everybody in their career is thinking of, you know, it's not a selfish play. It's more of a, hey, I want to strengthen my network. So people are going to want to help you just like you'll want to help other people because you'll see that value add from that. And what was the question before that? You said something about sharing your services, or I didn't say that.
Yeah, you know, and I'm not sure if he means that he's got his own company or that kind of thing. So, you know, I guess, I mean, if you got your own technical company, you've got a startup that you're doing, best way to market that, I guess. You know, you can do it through word of mouth. You can let people know at conferences. You can post it on Craigslist. Any other advice for that if you're doing a startup?
Join OpenTeams. that's my job. I work with usually it's maybe you have a startup and you have a particular skill set, but you're never going to be able to go and do consulting at JP Morgan with, you know, 5 years experience. But we may find out about something and then we need to put together 4 or 5 different partners. So now we can match you. And OpenTeams isn't the only one to do this. Our focus is more on the open source side. But, you know, there are people who do more project management with other companies and other consultancies. So, you know, a lot of consultancies will have a partnership person that you can reach out to. So that way, if maybe they're doing like a deep data science side, but they're not going to do an app. Like they're not going to do the UX UI for some app. They're going to do the back end of it, but they're going to hand it off or tell the client, hey, go find somebody else to do this graphic design for you, whatever it may be. And that may be where you want to be plugged in. So yeah, there's a lot of different areas and avenues that you can go with that, whether that's Fiverr, Upwork, Bears Dev, you know, sign up on Bears Dev. There's a lot of different things that you can, My B2B network is one, you know, that's one where they get a request from a company and then they just put out the bid to a bunch of different people in their network and you raise your hand and say, hey, I can do this part. So.
Yeah, no, really good advice. And so with OpenTeams, are you how much recruiting do you do for Austin and how much do you do for, you know, remote jobs and across the country?
So even though we are a remote company first. So we do not prioritize anybody here in Austin. It just so happens that me and some of the leadership are here in Austin. That's why we have a shared office space. But our company, we're actually global. So we have people in, you know, most countries, unless we have boots on the ground or, you know, Russia or North Korea or something, you know, our clients and partners are all over. So yeah, if there's people here who are interested in, you know, maybe if you need a mentor, I think this is a small enough group here. We have 19 people. Yeah. So I'd say if it was like 100 people, I'd be a little bit more hesitant about saying like, hey, yeah, just, you know, shoot me an email or follow up with me. It may take me a couple of weeks to follow up with 20 people, but, you know, I'm happy to connect you with people who may be interested in mentoring. Again, these are going to be more scientific Python, AI, ML space, you know, so if you're wanting to get into gaming, my mentor network connections are going to be much smaller, but happy to point you in the direction of other communities. But yeah, especially if you're wanting to do your own practice later on, you're doing this now, so that way you don't want to go work for, you know, a FANG company, something like that, or Mang company. You know, those are the people that typically I work with. You know, they were at the corporate level for a while, and now they want to do their own thing and have their own practice, and they don't want to worry about payroll or all the other things that come with owning your own business. They just want to focus on the tech side. You know, we work with those people. So how can you connect with you? I'll put my email in here. And is my LinkedIn in here as well? I put my LinkedIn.
Sure.
So here's my LinkedIn. And remember how I mentioned too, like you can change your linkedin.com/in/. That's where you want to make sure you alter that if you can. Then you can alter it once. Once you alter it once, it may lock you in. And then my email. So I made my chat really small so I could have my notes on this side of the screen and the browser here.
Gotcha. And Eduardo he's not talking about a startup company. He's talking about doing some freelancing. I don't know if that's web development, that kind of thing. But Tyler will give his advice. My advice would be to, put yourself out there. I know here in Portland, we're in downtown Portland, our school is. When I was a student and finishing up, there was food carts that were a block away that I would get my lunch at occasionally. And some of the food carts, I got to know the people that were there. And, I found out some needed some websites. So I started doing some websites for the food carts. And that was a good way for me to start with that. You can advertise on Craigslist and that kind of thing. Connections are a key thing there, I think. And that's a good way with freelancing. If you got family, if you got friends that have a small business or they're starting a small business, they will probably want a web presence. So you can develop a website for them.
I saw one on our neighborhood Facebook page here a couple weeks ago. I've been a part of it for 3 years now. We have over 1,000 people in our neighborhood, or 1,000 homes in our neighborhood, and it was the first one that popped up like, hey, I do some web design stuff. And I was like, oh, that's creative. And sure enough, there's like 15 people. Hey, I have a real estate company, or I have this flower company, or I have this, I have an Etsy site, but I'd rather move it off Etsy to my own. Great.
Yeah, it's just being looking for opportunities and being creative. All right, and I have a question, how can we connect with you? You just put that in there, so that's great. And one last thing, I guess, and we'll wrap this up, but what would you, just quickly, what is the process when you get connected with a recruiter? What is the process you go through when you're starting out with a recruiter?
So depending on the company, I don't think there's anything wrong. If you don't hear back, I say every, at least once a week, you should be pinging a recruiter if you don't hear from them. Sometimes they get busy, especially during a, high influx of stuff. I've seen emails where I'll read an email like at 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, okay, I'll respond to that in the morning. But then I wake up and I have 20 more emails. So I'm catching up with those and I totally overlooked responding to something. Make sure your voice is heard. I do think though, be patient. 48 hours is not too long between interactions. If you have an interview with somebody, say meet with the hiring, or you meet with the recruiting manager, they're going to set you up for your first interview. After that first interview, it may be 48 hours or, one more day before the recruiter hears anything back. So that's the hard part about being patient. But every interaction, after you have that interaction, reply with a thank you for your time with a summary of the events. I appreciated this. Tell them what you learned and why you want to continue with the process. That will make you stand out more than anything else. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate learning about X, Y, and Z, because now it puts you in the top of their mindset of, okay, they actually took something away and they appreciated this. And even if they looked at, oh, that was your weak point, now they're looking at it as, oh, like this actually may not be a weak point for them. They're interested in learning more. They're wanting to pursue that. So it can take away any negativity, like any negative marks that may be in there. It can help wipe that away. So I would do that. I wouldn't do it like an hour after your interview. I'd probably do it a few hours after, even if you just draft it up right after you're done with the thing. Like I've gotten auto-generated ones where the interview started like 30 minutes later than it should have. And then during my interview with them, I got an email thanking me for the interview. Like it was one of those candid ones that just went out and I was like, oh gosh, that was really heartfelt, wasn't it? That really meant what you said there. So.
Oh, wow. Good stuff. Well, Tyler, that's a great talk, and we appreciate you coming out, and we appreciate all the attendees coming out. I do like that you, gave the advice to be the hunter and not just the gatherer. So, be proactive, get out there and go to conferences, go to meetups. That will really help you out. So do let me know, Tyler, when Sequoia Capital's coming to Austin, let me know so I can come down there.
Okay.
So, so I can meet with the venture capitalists.
Yeah, you have to come to the what we call it, the Capital Factory. I go there about once a month. We have a really big meetup there. You have all your major corporate people too sponsoring it. So
good stuff. Yeah, I will definitely have to make a trip to Austin. All right, Tyler, thank you, and thanks for everyone coming out. We will have a Tech Talk again, same time, same channel next Friday, and details will be on meetup.com. All right, all. Gab, do you have anything else you want to add? Sorry.
Yeah, just to add to that, actually, we do have a Tech Talk every Friday until November, and we're working to add more schedules to that. So if you want to learn more about this stuff, just join us every Friday, same time.
Okay, and we'd love to have you back, Tyler.
sounds great. Happy to be there.
All right. All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Take care.